All right, and welcome in, everybody. Hope you all are having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shoemake, and this is the Shoemake Take. Hope you guys are doing very, very well. Today, we start with the AFC East in the 2025 season preview series, and we travel to South Beach to talk about the Miami friggin' Dolphins. We got to talk about those bad boys down there. So let's talk about them. Let's break down how I think they're going to do in 2025. But before we start, if you guys are new to this series, here's how the series will work. If those of you that want to jump into the discussion, it's in the description. It's in the timestamp. It's in the playhead. So if you want to go jump into the discussion, go right ahead. But this is how the season, our season preview series works here on the Shoemake Take. So number one, we start with recapping 2024. It's very brief, very quick. We're just going to talk about where their record was and what happened during their season. And then we jump into their offseason. We'll talk about if they made any important coaching changes. We'll talk about free agency, who they added, they lost, who they drafted in this past draft class, along with talking about if this team is truly improved or are they not from last year. After that, I'll pretty much break down what I think about the team, if they're going to be good, bad, mid, also point out some strengths, point out some weaknesses, and pretty much break down how I feel about the team. And then we'll break down their schedule. We're going to look at if it's easy, is it difficult, look at important matchups that I think are going to be obviously important to the Dolphins. And then after that, we'll look at where do they finish in their division? Do they make the playoffs? And then we'll cap all that off with an official win-loss record prediction for 2025. And then we'll wrap a bow on the whole thing, pretty much looking at some important storylines I think will be important in this case to the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, I'm not very high on this year, unfortunately. Last year, they finished 8-9, and Tua's injury early in the year and completely ruined it. It completely ruined it, and when Tua went down, this team went down with him, and by the time he came back, it was already too late. They won some games, they finished strong, but it was too little too late, and Dolphins missed the playoffs again. And again, another disappointing season for the Miami Dolphins. This offseason for Miami was mostly quiet for the most part until late June, early July when they traded away Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey. But their offseason was also quiet because they did bring back a lot of their players. A lot of it was 1 to 2 year deals, so not long-term solutions. But they did bring back a lot of their roster, so there's not a lot of turnover, which is important. And they brought in Zach Wilson, Alexander Madison to be backups, and then they brought in wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Akine from Tennessee, brought in tight end Pharaoh Brown, James Daniels to play guard, KJ Britt, Willie Gay as linebackers. I think their linebacker group is really full of depth now. I really, really like it. And they also added depth at corner, bringing Artie Burns, Kendall Sheffield, so guys that have been in the league for a while now. And then Ifeatu Melifonwu. I don't know how long he's been in the league, if I'm being honest, but he is depth. And then they added Minka Fitzpatrick, brought him back. Remember, he was drafted by Miami a long time ago via trade and brought in safety Ashton Davis from the Jets to take up that other safety spot. And then I conveniently skipped over him because we got to talk about Darren Waller, because their solution after trading away Jonnu Smith and trading for Darren Waller to come out of retirement, which I'm surprised that the Giants still had rights to him because I didn't know that's how that worked. But that being said, when I saw the news that they were trading for Darren Waller, here was my initial reaction. Dolphins are so stupid. And yes, they are incredibly stupid for trading for Darren Waller. You could have traded for anybody else. You could have traded draft capital for Kyle Pitts. It would have made more sense than trading draft capital for a tight end that not only hasn't played in a year, but also he's been garbage. Ever since he went to the Giants, he did literally nothing. You know how hard it is? Do you know how hard it is to get traded to the New York Giants? Right? Get a big contract like Darren Waller did. And to somehow statistically be comparable to Kenny Golladay? Like, how? Just how? Dang, that was a terrible move by the New York Giants. And then now, the Dolphins have to deal with it. And also, I'm not that big of a Darren Waller fan anyways. He's not that good of a person. He cheated on his wife to make and went to make music. So, I mean, not that the music makes him a bad person, but he cheated on his look I don't very highly on that, obviously. So, I cannot root for Darren Waller very much. And to think that that's the solution at tight end, man, you should have just kept Jonnu Smith. Really? Like, we're really talking about replacing Jonnu Smith coming off a career year, having a Pro Bowl appearance, with Darren Waller. Oh my God. Like, come on. Like, they even lost Durham Smythe at tight end, their backup tight end that's been there forever. They got rid of him. Like, I would have been more confident with Durham Smythe being the starter than Darren Waller. God, this move is so stupid for the Dolphins, man. Come on. This is so dumb. But let's forget talking about Darren Waller. We're rambling too much right now. But players that they lost running back Raheem Mostert. They let him go. Unfortunate, because a couple years ago he had 18 touchdowns, led the league, looked incredible. And then last year he got hurt, then got let go. And so now he's with the Raiders, which I think is a good fit for him. And then they brought in a couple receivers, Braxton Berrios and River Craft, just to provide depth and special teams play. And then I mentioned they lost Jonnu Smith and Durham Smythe. They also lost tight end Jack Stoll. And then a couple other important ones. They lost Calais Campbell and Emmanuel Ogbah on their defensive line. So 2 veteran presences gone. That's going to hurt them a little bit. And then losing Jalen Ramsey, unfortunate, but the writing was on the wall. He wanted a trade, so that was going to happen eventually. And then losing Javon Holland at free safety. At the time, it sucked, but now you have Minka Fitzpatrick, so hey, not too bad. But they did lose a decent amount in free agency. But again, even though they brought in some good players in free agency at certain spots, they also, like I said, brought back a lot of their players from last year. So the roster didn't have a lot of turnaround compared to some other teams that we're going to be talking about in this series. So that is a plus for them. And then we get into their draft, which I'm very intrigued by this draft. A couple players in particular. The first round pick defensive tackle, Kenneth Grant. He was the first defensive tackle taken off the board. Or no, second one, but after Mason Graham, because Mason Graham was picked 5th. Kenneth Grant was picked 11th, I think is where the Dolphins were selecting. 11th or 12th, I think. Maybe 13th, maybe. But Kenneth Grant, really, really strong player, very physically imposing, and they need talent on the defensive line. It's not great for them in terms of depth along with injury and health. So getting a guy like Kenneth Grant in the middle, I think he starts right away for them. And I don't know. I'm very excited about Kenneth Grant and how he's going to look by year's end. I don't know how much he's going to do week 1, obviously, in the first half of the year. But they need him to step up. They need him to get better as the year goes on. And if he can really refine his pass rush technique, refine his run defense technique, and really just get more technically sound in general, I think this could be a really, really good football player. I'm really excited about Kenneth Grant. And then they drafted guard Jonah Savainia in the 3rd round, who is currently competing with Liam Eichenberg to be the starting left guard of this team. The Dolphins need young talent on the offensive line, and Jonah Savainia gives them that. And I think if he ends up starting week 1, that'll be intriguing to follow. Although I think maybe you should start Liam Eichenberg. Even though he's not great, he's going to be stable. He's going to be okay. That way you don't have to rush Jonah very early, where, okay, you can give him time to develop and sit and learn the playbook, learn the offense, learn what's expected of him. And then next year you can start him. But if he ends up winning the starting job week 1, by all means, best of luck to him. And then they doubled up on defensive tackle in the 5th round, drafting Jordan Phillips, defensive tackle out of Maryland. This guy, very raw as a prospect, but if given time and proper development, if he hits, he could be a pretty good defensive tackle. Although I think right now he's probably just going to be depth for now. Although he could take some snaps at the end of the year, maybe. I don't know. I take that back, actually, because Zach Seiler is still there. Benito Jones is there, so I don't know if he ends up taking starting snaps. I highly doubt that. But I expect him to at least get some snaps, play a little bit. He's going to be interesting for them to follow. And then they also drafted Jason Marshall Jr., the corner out of Florida. He's projected to start next to Storm Duck. And Jason Marshall, I think I like the value that they got him for. The Dolphins really like this cornerback class. Very full of talent. So getting Jason Marshall Jr. had a lot of pass breakups, I'm pretty sure, when he was at Florida. Very athletic corner, too. So I like the fit, like the development the upside that there is with Jason Marshall. Then they drafted safety Dante Trader Jr., another guy that has some good upside in the secondary. They need youth in their secondary very, very bad. So seeing them double up here in back-to-back picks is important. And then they get running back Ollie Gordon. And this one I'm excited about because he rounds out a running back room where you have Devon Achane, who is your do-it-all, quick, good, speedy runner, catch out of the backfield. Then you have Jalen Wright, the running back out of Tennessee, who they drafted last year, who can do similar stuff. And then Alexander Mattison is a rookie, or not as a rookie, he's a veteran who can just bring some experience into the room. And then you have Ollie Gordon, who is a power back, strong physical runner. I can't remember what college. I think it was Oklahoma State he came out of. Their colors were orange. That's all I remember. But he ended up retiring as their all-time leading rusher, I think, or maybe mixing him up with Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. I just made the Bengals video not too long before this one, so they're still, all those late-round running backs are still kind of in my mind. But Ollie Gordon, big physical back, really rounds out that running back room and could be really excited for him because how they can use him in creative ways and also help take some pressure off of Devon Achane, I think. And then their last two picks, they picked quarterback Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas. His story has been very interesting to follow going into the 2024 in the college football season. A lot of people thought he'd be a first-round pick, and he fell to late day 3. So that's an interesting storyline we're going to have to follow. Probably going to be competing for the backup spot behind Zach Wilson. And then they drafted Zeke Biggers, another defensive tackle. So they went 3 defensive tackles in this draft to help fill the depth that they lost at that spot. And so overall, this draft is intriguing. They got some good talent. I'm really excited about Kenneth Grant, and Jason Marshall is intriguing. Ollie Gordon, I'm excited about. So there's enough here to where, okay, they got a good infusion of youth, I think. I think they got some good value. Solid draft class for the Miami Dolphins. But improvement-wise, I don't think this is an improved football team, unfortunately. Looking at who they added and who they lost, I thought they lost more than what they gained. And the Taylor Waller trade, oh my God. I just looked at it again. I was like, oh my God, the Taylor Waller trade. I'm going to clown on this move for as long as I can until Darren Waller's out of Miami and it all goes out like I'm thinking it will, or Darren Waller goes insane and proves me wrong. But I don't know. That's a very bad move. But this team's not improved. I think they lost more than what they gained. And their offseason was, again, pretty quiet, and then trading away Jalen Ramsey sucks, and then trading away Jonnu Smith was pretty stupid, in my opinion. So, jumping into what I think this team is going to look like, I'm not high on the Dolphins. I don't think I need to say that, considering how I've started up this video and what I just said, but it feels almost stagnant for them. They don't really feel like they've gone anywhere. And that being said, though, part of the reason why I think the Dolphins aren't going to be very good, I'm expecting Tua to get hurt at some point. I don't want him to get hurt. I want him to play a whole 17 games. I'm never going to root for anybody to get hurt, obviously. But considering that this is a trend for Tua Tagovailoa, I'm a trendy person. I follow trends. So if Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt every year and misses some time, I expect Tua to miss some time this year. And that's going to play a role in how the Dolphins play and what their record looks like. But if Tua stays healthy a full 17 games, this team will be better than what I have them going. So that's going to be something I'm going to look at. That's going to be a big storyline for the Miami Dolphins. So Tua staying healthy. But for now, I'm not high on the Dolphins. They didn't really go anywhere. They feel kind of stagnant to me. But they do have some strengths on their team that are going to be really fun to watch. Number 1, quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. When he's out there, he's good. Say what you want if you think he's good or bad. No, the film and the stats show that he is a pretty darn good quarterback. So he's a strength. He's good. I'm expecting him to be good again. Running back is another strength, which is hard for me to say because Devon Achane last year was so inconsistent. He'd have games where he'd go for like over 100 rushing yards, nearly 100 receiving yards, and in some games he'd barely break 70 scrimmage yards. So I'm expecting Devon Achane to be better this year and be more consistent. But Jalen Wright going into year 2, probably going to be used a little bit more. Ollie Gordon, I'm excited about. So if they can use these 3 running backs, and I'll throw Alexander Mattison in there as well. I don't want to count him out completely, but I think if they can use these running backs a little bit more creatively, a little bit more diversely, I think this running back room can be a strength. Where instead of it being Devon Achane and a bunch of other people, no, I think this should be a more of a committee approach where you got a bunch of guys that are talented, that can do a bunch of different things. In that way, it's not going to be so much pressure on one person to do a whole lot. So with Jalen Wright stepping into year 2 and Ollie Gordon, Alexander Madison. I think this running back room overall is better. So I'm pretty inclined to say that it's a strength for the Baltimore Ravens, for the Miami Dolphins. So I'll be looking to see how well they progress. And then linebacker, I teased this one earlier. I really like their depth. Willie Gay, KJ Britt, Jordan Brooks. There's another guy in there that I'm not mentioning that I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. But their linebacker room has a lot of veterans. Has a lot of veterans that have started for a long time, that have been starters at other places for a long time. So this linebacker group should be pretty good for them. I'm excited about what they can do. I think they're going to be very stable. And given the defensive line and the secondary, they need some stability somewhere on defense, and having it at linebacker, probably one of the best spots you could have it, because they're the quarterback of the defense. They control everything, so they need to be good, and I think linebackers will be good for the Dolphins this year. But their weaknesses, though, they got plenty of them. Tight end, obviously losing Jonnu Smith and adding Darren Waller, that's just an objective loss. But then they lost Durham Smythe, Jack Stoll, so the guys that have been there for a while are gone. So overall, this tight end group has taken a big step backwards. I don't think the tight end position is going to be very notable this year for Miami. I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel about it. And then defensive line right now is a weakness because Zach Seiler, a defensive tackle, had 10 sacks last year. He was good. And then Kenneth Grant, he's going to be starting. I'm excited about him, but we'll have to see. The edge rusher group, I included, oh no, they're actually next to each other. I apologize. So defensive line, they added a lot of depth there in the draft. I don't know. When you have your two starting guys, Zach Seiler is fine and Kenneth Grant is a rookie. I don't know how good that's going to be. I think they could get better as the year goes on, but right now I don't expect it to be a very strong unit. But next to them, the edge rushers, they kind of go together here. I'm not high on these edge rushers. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are talented, but they can't stay healthy. Chop Robinson's going into year 2. I'm excited for him, but he didn't do a whole lot. So that's going to be kind of an interesting thing to look at. And then cornerback, this one's probably the second biggest weakness on this team. Storm Duck is the cornerback 1. He's talented, but is he ready to take that next step? I'm not sure. And then your other starting corners, Jason Marshall, who was a day 3 pick. So not great at all. At least you got Minka Fitzpatrick and Ashton Davis, who should help them out. But the corners, I don't know how good they're going to be this year. I think they're going to struggle a lot. And then last one is the wide receiver depth. Outside of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, there's not much there. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Let me tell you something. You shouldn't be super excited about Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. I'm a Titans fan. I am a diehard Titans fan, if you guys out there that didn't know that. I watched Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is not a starting receiver in the NFL. He is a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. He is a depth player. But the thing is, the Titans have had such bad wide receivers since they traded away A.J. Brown. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has had to play bigger roles than what is not for him. He's not a starting wide receiver. He's not talented enough. But even last year, didn't have good wide receivers outside of Calvin Ridley, so he had to step into a bigger role. And hey, this year he caught 9 touchdowns. Fantastic. He's not a consistent 9 touchdown scorer every single year. Every year after that, or before that, he'll get like 2 to 3 at most. So Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is not a starting receiver, and he is the best receiver not named Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So that is unfortunate. That it means that your wide receiver depth is very weak. So if Tyreek Hill, who has injury, who could get hurt, dealt with injuries last year, and then Jalen Waddle, who also dealt with injuries last year, if one or both of those guys, God forbid, go down, it's going to be bad news for the Dolphins and for Tua. So they need to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle need to stay healthy, man. If they do not stay healthy, it's not going to bode well for them. So as you can see, they have a lot more weaknesses than they do strengths. I'm not very high on this team, and that's part of the reason why. Then we go to look at their schedule, and their schedule is pretty interesting. Looking at it, the first 4 games, week 1, you go on the road to Indianapolis. That's going to be a tough game week 1 for the Miami Dolphins, but I think they win. Then you come back home to host the New England Patriots. I think they can win that one. Mike Vrabel in his second game coaching the Patriots. And then you go on the road to Buffalo week 3. I don't think the Dolphins lose that game. But the next game, they kind of have a bigger week to prepare for the Jets. At home on Monday Night Football, I think the Dolphins win this game. I think they start off 2-2 more than likely, but if they can start off 3-1 and beat the Patriots, I think that could be really good for them to start their year and being better than what I expect. But right now, I have them going 2-2. Then, week 5, you get the Carolina Panthers. I think the Dolphins can win that game. The Panthers defense, while they added some good pieces, is still going to be young, still going to have some growing pains. If everybody's healthy by this point, I think the Dolphins can win this game. And then you have week 6 against the Chargers at home. That's going to be a tough one. I think the Chargers win that. But every single time, like these quarterbacks from the 2021 draft class, whether it's Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua, Jalen Hurts, these guys, whenever they face off, it's always a good game. It's always fun. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on it. And then week 7 against the Browns on the road. That's a game they should win. Then you continue being on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. That's a tough game. I wouldn't say tough environment. The Falcons aren't a really good home team for some reason. But it is going to be a challenging game nonetheless. And then you host Baltimore on Thursday Night Football. I don't think the Ravens lose that game, so I count that as a loss for Miami. And then you host Buffalo. That's going to be tough. They probably get swept this year. And then the Commanders, you host the Commanders, and they lose to that one as well. So this 4-game stretch between the Falcons and the Commanders, that's a rough stretch. I think they go 0-4 going into their bye, which is unfortunate, but these teams are simply better than Miami, in my opinion. And then it does get better, though, because you host the Saints week 13, coming off the bye week. They win that game. I think the Saints are going to suck this year. And then you face the Jets in week 14. That's going to be a tough one. I think the Jets get a little bit better as the year goes on, so definitely not going to be as easy of a win as week 4, but it is a winnable game. And then week 15, you have Monday Night Football on the road at Pittsburgh. Whenever these two teams face off, something weird happens, something interesting happens, but I think the Steelers are a better football team. They win that game. And then Sunday Night Football, they host the Cincinnati Bengals. I think the Bengals win that game, but like I said, with these 2021 quarterback draftees, they usually play pretty well. It's a fun game, so I'll be excited to watch that one. And then you host Tampa. I think you lose that one. And then you go on the road to face New England, which New England Patriots week 18 are going to be a much better football team than what they are week 2. I don't know if they win that game. So, I mean, their second half of their schedule is just brutal. It's really brutal. That 4-game stretch from the Falcons and the Commanders going into their bye, and then you finish off with Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Tampa, New England, a better, improved New England team. Even the Jets are probably going to be better by this point too, I think. So it's going to be tough. The Dolphins don't have a very easy schedule. Their start of their year is going to be encouraging, but this later half is just so tough for them. And so it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for them to win. And if Tua gets hurt at any point, that's going to make their season even worse. But right now, I think I had them originally finishing 3rd. I'd have to do the math and make sure that, I'm not breaking any rules when I change this. But honestly, I think they finished 4th in the division. They feel stagnant. They don't feel that much better. And with the schedule and how brutal it is in the second half, I don't know how confident I am in the Dolphins being very good this year. And my official prediction for them, as I knocked over my script again, I have them going 6-11. That's a pretty low number. That is a very low number for the Miami Dolphins. But everything that I listed out is why I have them going 6-11. I don't know. I just don't feel very confident about the Miami Dolphins this year. But again, like I said earlier in the video, if Tua can start all 17 games, they'll win more than 6 games. I'll tell you that. Part of the reason why I have them winning only 6 games is because I expect Tua to get hurt at some point. And looking at how the Dolphins fell the heck apart last year with Tua going down, I don't know how they're going to stay afloat, although they did try to help. They drafted Quinn Ewers, they brought in Zach Wilson, they tried to bring in youth, and they brought in talent to help circumvent that. If Tua goes down, we'll have to see how effective Zach Wilson or Quinn Ewers is. If that is to happen, I hope it doesn't. But with all the other factors going against the Miami Dolphins, I just don't know if they're going to be a very good team this year. But there is going to be some cool storylines to look at with Miami. I already mentioned Tua's health being the biggest one. The success that the Dolphins have is going to really be surrounded by him. as it usually is anyways, in a pretty drastic way. But if Tua can stay healthy, the Dolphins are going to win more than 6 games. If he goes down, I'll be more confident in sticking with 6-11. But the running back progression and offensive line progression are going to be very important for me to follow, because the running back position, obviously they have a lot of youth. I think they need to be used more creatively, be used in a more committee approach instead of Devon Achane taking a whole bunch of snaps. So, excuse me, that's going to be interesting to follow. And then the offensive line progression. It's not just Jonah Saviena that is young. Obviously, Patrick Paul, the left tackle out of University of Houston, former second-round pick, is going to be starting at left tackle now that Teron Armstead retired, which is unfortunate. And there are a couple other guys in there that are somewhat young, so they need to grow on this offensive line. They need to develop a little bit just for the sake of everything else around it, because the Dolphins don't have the infrastructure weapon-wise to have offensive line issues. If someone goes down or if his offensive line's not good enough, then this offense is going to have some issues, I think. But on the defensive side, I'm looking at Kenneth Grant, Chop Robinson, Storm Duck, and Jason Marshall. These are the youngest young bucks on their defense. And considering that they need a good infusion of youth on that side of the ball, they need to develop and progress. Can Chop Robinson show some good signs? Can he have like a 7-8 sack season and show some significant growth? Can Kenneth Grant go from, I don't know how he's going to be starting week 1, but is he going to develop and show some serious progression by week 18? Same thing for Storm Duck and Jason Marshall. These corners, I think, early are going to struggle a lot. Do they refine their game and get better as the year goes on? Because if they do, that's going to bode very well for them in the future. But those 4 guys in particular on the defensive side, I'm really going to be looking at, because the future of the Miami Dolphins kind of hangs on them on that side. So I'm really hoping that they can step up, because the Dolphins really need them too. And then this one is, if the Dolphins go 6-11, when does Mike McDaniel get fired? Because I know that everyone loves Mike McDaniel. They love how he talks. They love how he operates. His offense, obviously, when it's full strength, it's fun to watch. I mean, the 70-point game against Denver, obviously the highlight of his achievements so far. So it's going to be sad to see Mike McDaniel fired. I think he's going to get scooped up instantly by another team. But if the Dolphins win only 6 games, I think that he's going to go. And at that point, he's been the Miami Dolphins coach for 4 years, only 1 playoff appearance, 1 playoff loss, and 6-11 will be the worst year that he's had as head coach of the Miami Dolphins. So, I don't think he would survive that if they go 6-11. But that is going to do it for me today with the Miami Dolphins. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. And if you've made it this far, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe button. We broke 100 subscribers, and we're still counting upward. Thank you very much, by the way, all of you. Please hit those 2 buttons as we're trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the 2025 regular season. So big lofty goal to reach, but I believe that we can do it. So please hit those 2 buttons for me and help me grow this community that we are building together. And then I already mentioned, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think 6 wins is too low for the Miami Dolphins? Do you think they're going to be better? I saw some people thinking they're going to go 11-6, which is pretty crazy to me, but I'd like to hear your guys' reasoning. Lastly, make sure you guys share this video and follow me on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Getting ready to post content back on there here soon, probably by the end of this week if I had to guess, once all these videos I'm making this week are done. So for now, that is going to do it for me. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, I will see you all next time.